ma'am.
All right, so I'm just doing a little introduction. This is Pat McPherson talking. We're at the home of Mark Wilke.
Hello.
In Arlington, Mass. I'm here with Susan Creighton as well. And we are creating an archive of the Marlboro Morris Ale, and it will reside at the Vermont Folklife Center, currently in Middlebury, Vermont. It's August 7th, 2023. Anything else? I think
Sounds
that's
good.
it.
All right.
So we don't know one another, so hi.
Hi.
I'm not even a Morris dancer.
What? How have you been able to resist?
Pat's been getting a crash course.
Crash
here.
course in all things Morris. I was a Scottish Highland dancer, so
Oh, okay.
I was already like jumping up and down on the balls of my feet on concrete and stuff, so I figured
Yeah. That's crazy.
Practically the same thing.
practically the same thing.
Quieter, right? You
Quieter.
didn't have all the bells and the sticks.
Excellent costumes.
That's right.
Kilts and everything.
And
so.
did you have to wear a little blonde wig too for that? Oh, that's good. Okay.
That's Irish.
Oh, that's Irish. You're right.
Scottish.
See, what do I know?
Uh-oh.
Oh my God.
Well, I would go to Pine Woods, but I wouldn't go during, if you weren't in that week, you might not even know about it.
That's right. That's right. So
In
I
fact,
was.
the first few times I went to Pine Woods, I don't think I saw any Morris dancing. I mean, was there at Folk Music Week. And
When
we
was
just,
that?
74,
Oh, yeah.
75. I mean, that picture right there is me dancing with Tony at Pine Woods. And there's John Roberts on the right.
Yeah.
And that was fun because he had just himself gotten into it. He had just sort of discovered it. He probably knew it, he said, as a boy, but he never paid much attention to it. So suddenly that was his new thing, and he just soaked up all the dances, and we were there at Pine Woods, and I was already dancing. I'd been dancing for 3 years at that point, so I knew what I was doing, I thought. And he said, now we were going to do a show dance for all of Pine Woods, and he said, now, it's Queen's Delight, Bucknell. And I said, don't mess up the corner crossing. You're going to be my partner. Don't make me look bad. And I was like, okay. I'm thinking, don't make me look bad because you're the newer dancer. And sure enough, he screwed up. And I never, said anything about it, but it was fun to think, famous Tony, like, especially having told me, don't mess up the dance and make us look bad. I was like, oh, I'll try not to. Gee, Tony.
I love it.
So when did you started when then?
So I started dancing when I moved to Boston. We were doing folk music stuff, and a friend of mine said, hey, this guy Roger Cartwright is teaching country dancing down at the Courier Dorm at Radcliffe College, and come on down. And so we would go, I forget what night of the week it is, but we would do contra dances. He would teach simple contra dances, and then at the end of the night, he would show a few Morris dancing steps. And after a few weeks of this, he was sort of taking more people aside and doing more Morris dancing, because that was clearly where he was more interested in, it seemed to me. And then again, after several months of this, he said, to the guys, the men, maybe we should start a team. We were like, what is that? What do you mean start a team? What we just do this here with you? Yeah. And he said, oh, no, in England there's all these teams and they dance all the time and they get together, they go to pubs. And we're like, what's a pub? So there weren't any such things in America, at least back then. Now there's pubs everywhere.
There was a bar.
It was a bar. They had Bud Light and,
Exactly.
Miller and Falstaff and stuff. Anyway, so we started just actually on a different night, he'd have just Morris dancing. And so we'd concentrate on that. And he got a little group of like-minded guys together, which formed our team. And this would have been the end of 73, beginning of 1974. And we danced all through 1974. And everywhere we went, seemed like nobody'd seen it. People were coming up to us after dances, after performances, and this looks great. How can we join? Do we want to do it too? And so we not only expanded the roster, other people in other towns were saying, "Oh, maybe we should do this too." And some of Roger's friends who'd gone to England with him in '73 just there were some Pine Woods guys actually. So John Dexter was another one, and he was living in Binghamton, New York at that point. So he was starting a team around that same time, 1974, and so it was basically, it became, well, we like to think of Roger as kind of the Johnny Appleseed of Morris, and not just from the teams he actually started, but the interest he showed in others to start their own teams, like John Dexter. I mean, John Dexter was going to do it anyway, but Roger encouraged him, and there were a couple of guys in Greenwich, New York, the Greenwich men were starting up. They were also some of the alumni of that English trip. So they all kind of caught the bug, but Roger was the one that was just really, he would send out these long letters telling, going on and on about the philosophy and how great it is in England, his times there, and wouldn't it be great if we could get Morris going in America? Because, the Pilgrims left it behind. There wasn't any. I mean, there was Pine Woods, which was kind of very, they did it in the summer, and that was great, and they'd have a fall tour, but in Roger's mind, it wasn't enough. He wanted a local dancing team that danced out regularly, like once a week or so. If possible. Wow. So our team started at 70, and by 75, Roger, again, gung-ho, let's go to England. So we took off the entire summer. We were students, so we took 6 weeks.
Wow.
And flew to England and, camped in fields and danced all over the countryside. We were invited to no fewer than 3 Morris Ring meetings. Wow. And by the 3rd Ring meeting, we were inducted. They said, you guys are great. You're in. So they gave us, the staff of office. They had this big ceremony. It was quite something. So when we came back, we'd been dancing together for 6 weeks. So we were every day. So we were pretty good. Most teams dance once a week, practice, whatever. So we felt we were pretty good, and others did too. So our first ale, when Tony, so by that point there were, I forget how many, 10, 11, maybe 12 teams just getting going. And Tony, who's been so gung-ho about it, said, let's have an ale like they do in England, where the teams come together. It's not competition. It's just seeing, it's showing each other how to do it and having a good time. Great idea. So 1976 was the first ale. I think some Marlboro people said there was one in 75, but it was kind of just them and maybe...
It was when they got married.
That was actually Tony and
Andrew.
Andy's wedding.
Okay, right.
Their wedding reception was kind of a proto-ale.
Right.
And gave them the idea to start it next year. Yeah.
So the first official one in 76, we were invited along with the other teams, and we got to see each other, and again, we were pretty good because we'd been dancing that much. And then still sticking with the team dynamics, really by the end of our trip in England, we'd kind of been in each other's faces so much. Roger had to leave early because he had to come back for some college thing or domestic, family thing, and we were, the last week or 2 weeks, we're kind of on our own, and we're relatively mature folks. So we came back with this attitude like, we don't really need a squire. We can kind of all make decisions and such. And then right about that time, not to get too much into the weeds, but Roger felt that, so again, some of the core of the team, we were all, 3 years dancing by that point. Morris was settling into a proper place in our lives, and maybe not every week we could be out. And so some of us were, maybe not as regular as Roger would like. And he sent out a pretty hardline letter saying, you must be here every week or you should quit. Which I was like, why would you say that? Anyway, rest in peace, Roger. It was unfortunate because the guys he sent the letter to, they quit. They said, oh, well, sorry, we can't do it the way you want us to do it, so we quit. And we had taken in some newer guys by that point, enough to have a side.
Were you one of the ones that quit?
No. So I thought, maybe I'll stay on the... I was upset like the rest of my guys. We were all anyway. I said, no, if I stay on the team, maybe we can work something out. And so Also at that time, Roger was in the process of moving out of town, and several of the other guys who also sort of felt the way he felt were leaving town, and so we were left with a pretty small group of New Cambridge guys with me, who were relatively newer dancers, and then all the other guys who had quit. And the older guys, or the more long-term dancing guys who had quit, said, well, maybe we should form a team. And so we hashed it out. Again, I'm on both, one night I'm going to one team, one night I'm going to the other. And so we hashed it out and came up with an odd name, Newtowne, which is actually the original name for Cambridge, Massachusetts,
Right.
back in colonial days. So we thought there was a nice connection there.
Yeah.
So Newtowne it became. And
About when was that?
so that was exactly in 1977.
Oh, it all happened like crunch.
Crunch, yeah, it happened quick. Well, we started in 73, so 74, 75, it seemed like a long time before it happened, but then in the scheme of things, it was pretty early on. But there's a silver lining to the story. So so actually for that ale, the May ale of 77, we came as two teams. Tony said, I'm not really wild about unaffiliated dancers. You really should come as a team. So New Cambridge had enough guys. And Newtowne, if we kind of scooped a musician from somewhere, we'd have enough to show. So actually on the roster that you grabbed, we're listed as two different teams. So it involved some quick costume changing on my part.
Yeah. Were you the only one who was like...
Yeah. So again, after the ale, and we kind of, each team kind of squeaked through the summer, and by the fall, I sent out a letter to everybody saying, neither of us are going to make it. We don't have enough guys on either team. Let's see about getting back together. So I was like Haley Mills, singing the song. And so we had a little tour, and Roger wasn't around and stuff, and we had a great time, and people sort of bonded again, and so we decided to come back together.
So that's why you say New Cambridge, Newtowne.
Yeah. So, and then it was completely repaired at that point. We kept the new name. Some of the New Cambridge guys were grousing about that, but nobody really was that.
Yeah.
And by also that point, we hadn't really. Anyway, there were lots of discussions of new kit and such, so there was kind of a chance to start again, but with a lot of the same guys, most of the same guys. So to me, there was that rough patch, but.
What happened to Roger?
He moved out of town. He was out in Western Mass starting teams out there. He started.
Oh, that was far away.
Well,
right.
Not that far away.
Not that far away.
No, but
he is what I mean.
Right. He. It was unlikely that he would come back. Although we did invite him back for a big, bury the hatchet kind of evening celebration, and it was going great until he decided to, do his Roger thing, and he got up and said, "Let's have the." He wanted to open the wound on the division again, inadvertently. But so some of my guys who had taken, said, "Mark, you got us back together. That's great, but what were you thinking inviting Roger?" But anyway, that was just a momentary blip. So no, he was out in Western Mass. He started another couple of teams, a rapper team out there. So, and he pretty much has lived out there until he passed away a few years ago.
Wow.
And John Dexter also has gone
Right.
to Morris Heaven recently.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was, between. So also the first few years that we started, we were sort of we felt we were the two main, men's teams, and Roger was keen on also duplicating the traveling Morris, which is an English tradition where two teams get together and they spend a week dancing together in little towns. So for starting in 76 and 77 and actually until now, it was our two teams dancing together with the Binghamton Morris men. And again, after a few years, when not enough of one team couldn't make it or the other team couldn't make it, felt like, let's open it up to other individual dancers. So at this point, I think it was like the 45th one they just had in Boston, the dancers are from all over the place, but their connection is to the traveling Morris. So they actually have their own kit, and they do their own thing for that week,
Right.
camping out. And the campsite's gotten a lot more plush than it used to be. They've got propane stoves, propane showers.
There's our cook.
There's many good cooks. So that's a whole separate little branch that Roger and John Dexter kept going.
Right.
And has been very successful. They've gone over to England and danced with the Traveling Morris, the original English one. And
Wow.
so
Oh my God, you were right in the middle of all that.
going off the track, I suppose.
That's fine.
Should we move on to more Marlboro-related stuff?
Well, we would like to talk about the character of the team, which both you personally, what drew you to this group of people the kinds of extra activities that you indulge in. But also,
Fondly referred to as the Newtowne hijinks.
Oh,
Yes.
really?
Yes.
Okay. Like what drew you there, and how you would describe the character of the team as it has evolved.
So again, the character has evolved. Back then, we started out as a pretty serious, we just do Morris dancing. Roger was very serious about it. Got to do it just like they do in England, and we learned a smattering of traditions from the Cotswolds, and then also we did some rapper dancing, and we kept up the seriousness. I mean, it's all serious. It was, it takes a fair amount of commitment, but I guess it was at Marlboro where we thought, let's have some fun. We're camping, and early on, we just started, because it's the team had a range of abilities. People were good at different things. A couple of guys are great cooks. A couple of guys are really good at equipment procurement. Mark Ward on the team was a former Boy Scout, and he had just tons of stuff, giant tents and all kinds of equipment that would make camp life. He had this, we call it the mega walk. It was a walk on a propane stand that, could feed half the army. We had a mega grill. So our campsite right away got, we didn't want to, you're roughing it, but you don't have to rough it that much. Yeah. This is before they even had porta potties at Marlboro, so it's challenging.
Bring your own.
Well, these
won't
days
go into that.
Yeah, these days we probably would bring our own, but and so in the early days at Marlboro, sticking with that. So I guess it wasn't just at Marlboro. So we were becoming, and I mentioned this in this little script, we really had become one of the things that Roger hoped for, which was a community. That we were, the team was solidified as a group, especially after we got back together, ironed out the differences. And one of the important parts of coming back together was the sense that nobody was going to be the squire. That depending on one person wasn't great, because if that person left town, we'd seen it all over the place. A man or woman would start a team with lots of charisma and leadership. When that person drifted away, the team sometimes just kind of faded away and didn't keep going.
Yeah.
So early on we said, we're all going to be squires, which in some of the early Marlboro, the squires had to go to a place to learn about what the activities of that day were. All 10 of us would show up. So that was fun. But so decentralized leadership was important to us, and the community aspect. A number of us were starting families at that point, getting married. We'd have Morris dancing at the weddings, and we had a series of things through the year. We always had a big Easter feast that somebody hosted. We'd go to that. We had Christmas parties. We had just times when the team would get together and enjoy each other's company. Yeah. So that kept up at Marlboro. We'd go there, and the first few years they didn't have. They had a feast on Saturday night. Maybe it was Sunday night. I forget. But it was only for dancers. So all the significant others who'd come, if they came, were on their own to sit around in their tents on the grass and eat peanut butter jelly sandwiches or something. So right away we thought, well, that's not right. So we started having our own feast right away, so that our significant others, in our case it was all women, could stay with us, and we'd have our little feast down on the field. Not to slight the team, the Marlboro team, for having theirs. We weren't, trying to diss them at all, but we just felt it was good to have our own group having feasts. And I can show you in this book, our feasts took on a life of their own, because some of the people were like, oh, well, if we're going to do this, we should have, this, we should have a printed menu. We should
have oysters.
Well, absolutely. Oysters was often one of the, so, and doing that in Marlboro in the field can be a challenge, but we rose to it. And so our feast after a few years, got so elaborate that some of the other teams were kind of like coming down and wanting to sort of glom onto our event, which was fine, but I forget the timing, but eventually Marlboro said, that is a good idea. We should open the feast up to everybody. It wasn't that many more people, and they'd all paid, I think, the same money to be there, but not to have the feast. So I forget how many years it was, but it was a few years that Marlboro then started having the feast open, and so we didn't really need to have our own feast. But the kind of the culmination year, and I've got some pictures of this, not too many from the feast, but we kind of snuck in and took over the music building for our feast. So we had tables, we had, I'd made a friend, I had commissioned an artist friend to make a giant piñata of Tony dressed as the Betty. His yellow outfit. I don't know if you've seen pictures of it, but he's what was his name? Mother. Yeah. So we had this giant piñata. It was the food theme, of course, was fiesta. It was Mexican food. So we had a multi-course Mexican feast. We had this huge piñata, and Tony, I don't remember if we told him, but he drifted in at that time when the piñata was about to be, and so he was very good sport, and we gave him, we blindfolded him and gave him the stick for the first few whacks. And he's very theatrical, so he
got into it.
Intentionally missed, because you don't want to hit it on the first couple, because where's the fun in that? So he was a real good sport about that. So that was sort of the last, I think, of our big separate feasts. So that kind of, so some years then the theme would be directly related to whatever food someone wanted to cook. So one year, someone who was into Italian food said, well, let's have an Italian feast. So, of course, if you're going to have an Italian feast, you should build Rome. You should have Roman ruins. You should have an Italian wine garden set up. So we did all that in the field. We brought up Roman ruins, and there's pictures of that in there. One year we had, what were some of the other? Well, the space year was a challenge food-wise, but so we had. Sometimes if a guy said, what theme haven't we done yet? Let's think about it. And a lot of bad themes got knocked down right away. One guy wanted to do biker bar, women in bikini biker bars or something like that. And I was
could have had
that's not going to
greasy hamburgers.
Yeah, no, there were possibilities, but better thoughts prevailed, and but one of my favorite years. Well, there's lots of good ones, but the space year, we thought of the theme, but then we thought, space food,
Tang,
food squeezed out of tubes, freeze-dried ice cream, which is absolutely tasteless. So the food that year wasn't great, but the theatrical part of it was a lot of fun. We built this huge space station. We put about a 30-foot or 50-foot circle of aluminum poles, wrapped it with Mylar, had airport landing lights, battery operated, on each of the poles shining up. So at night it made this huge corona in the sky. In fact, somebody said the local airport was concerned that planes were seeing something they weren't sure was supposed to be there over Marlboro College.
There were a lot of UFOs reported that
and we
summer.
had, and that was the year we were in the spacesuits, these Tyvek suits you see behind you, and when we had the headphones.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say hello.
Okay.
Are we going again?
Yes, we're going.
Oh, okay.
What was I just saying that you said I should repeat?
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
About
You
recruiting.
sure you don't want
Oh,
any
right.
iced tea
I'm
or
good, thank
water?
you.
All right.
We were talking about the nature, the character of the team.
Right.
And you were talking about themes.
Themes and feasts. And
you were, all of a sudden you introduced themes when most teams coming to the AL are not concerned about themes.
Not at all. No, nobody else was, not really. I mean, Binghamton one year brought a giant fiberglass Tyrannosaurus Rex, which was fun, but like, okay.
What's your theme?
Well, that's what we would say. So, are we Jurassic Park? What's your angle?
Where's this coming?
Yeah.
Right. So how did that evolve?
So again, the food kind of lent the theme idea, and the themes sometimes, like I said, the space year was not food first; it was theme first. But it was just fun. It was just something to make life more complicated. I mean, bringing Marlboro. I mean, a lot of teams would show up, and it was all they could do to get tents and sleeping bags and themselves there, and their outfits clean. And
Right.
I guess we felt we'd been doing that a long time, and that's the easy part. So let's bring a lot more stuff.
It was the nature of the people in the team.
Yes. A number of people would say, well, if we're going to do that, we should, if you're going to buy one, let's buy a case of them. If we're going to do, bring your cook stove, let's bring giant
really
grills.
good one.
So anything worth doing is worth overdoing was an unofficial motto. Every dance a show dance was another motto. Every meal a feast was another motto. And I'm one of the guilty parties who would say, well, we could do that. We could, because we toss around ideas, and I somewhere have the big whiteboards for a couple of the years. Like this is the crib notes for the hijinks for one year, and I would just write down people's ideas. They would shout things out, and there were a lot of great ideas, but you have to make them happen.
Yeah.
And so
okay.
making them happen, like bringing Stonehenge. Making Stonehenge was easy, but bringing it there was not easy. Like, how did they do the real Stonehenge? They carried it 25 miles, these giant Saracens of rock. Yeah, if they did that, we could do this. So it's just...
Easter Island! Come on!
That was one of the themes we didn't do, and boy, I wish we had done. But what food? I mean, they all starved and died, right?
Right. There were
they
no
used
trees.
They used up all their resources putting
Exactly.
stupid statues everywhere. No, I really wish we'd done Easter Island, and we did talk about that as a number of times. But so again, they kind of melded. We got bigger and bigger. In the 1990, 91, we had 30, 35 guys and spouses and talented people. Our show dance that year, we did jockey broccoli, which is a dance where halfway through the dance you're in a straight line facing one direction. We had 4 sets. We had 24 guys, all facing one way at Newtowne and turned around and did the other. So that was like, our biggest membership time. And you'll see in the pictures, we had just a great group of folks, all very talented, and so the hijinks really, the effort, the level of hijinks really went up there,
and attracts like.
Mm-hmm. So and it also repels. I mean, some people who thought Morris really should be just serious, and what's all this frivolity about? They, from other parts of the field, you could hear dissenting voices sometimes very loudly.
Like, keep it down.
Famously, some woman who maybe had kids there with her was camping, and she'd shout out, "Why don't you guys ever shut up? We're trying to sleep." And in unison, we'd shout back, "You don't come to Marlboro to catch up on your sleep," which was also another motto. And importantly, and this was always central to my thinking and other guys on the team, we didn't do this at Marlboro to be exclusionary. Anything we dreamed up and brought there was going to include anyone. If we had I forget, we'd have tea parties, and then the Windsor team came one year and from England, and so our theme was obviously we thought it's got to be England. So we dressed up as boring English Morris dancers. In fact, back then none of us had stomachs, so we had to put pillows in our shirts to give that old English guy paunch that we had seen the English Morris dancers, and the Windsor women were quite amused by that. But they were good sports. They came dressed. They came with their outfits to have an English tea, so formal attire. One woman, their fool Cherry, had a persona as the queen, so she did a knighting ceremony. Foamhenge was right there behind them, so it all and English flags and lots of English stuff. We served English food, sandwiches with the little crust cut off and high tea stuff, and it was a lot of fun. But again, so we would include anyone could come to that, and sometimes this would sort of get set up on a Friday and reach its full potential by Sunday, as either things were set up or people were catching on it. And again, Marlboro team usually, they were pretty either tolerant or really got into it. It seemed to us, and it had nothing to do with Morris dancing. And we would do this at the college, out in public. We were pretty much just straight, Morris dancers. A couple of times at Newtowne, some of the hijinks theme would creep back in, maybe for a show dance or something. But for all the public performances around, both on Saturday and Sunday, we would just Morris dance.
Yeah.
The frivolity was we tried to pretty much keep at the camp.
For the social time.
For the social time, yeah.
Yeah.
For non-dancing time.
So I've heard other people speaking with us and said, well, we had to decide, were we going to be like a Morris dance team, or was this really a social group? So, and it was like it was an either or thing.
Right. We said early on, it's both. I mean, for it to be fun, we'd seen what being too serious about Morris dancing, if you must show up every week or you should quit. We saw what that led to, and we didn't like it. So we were willing to, be looser around the edges, and if guys moved away, they didn't have to quit the team. They could come back if their job took them back to Boston or whatnot. Or we were perfectly fine with someone moved to California for 3 years. Come on
You're
back.
still part of the team.
Still part of the team, yeah. And so our roster got to be multiple pages. The print got smaller. The typeface got smaller and smaller. At one point, we needed a magnifying glass practically to read it all. But so then around 1995, this is kind of a real turning point. The Marlboro team told us that's probably going to be the last ale. They'd been doing it for 20 years. They were kind of running out of steam. They weren't sure who the leadership was going to be. I don't know all the circumstances, but we were led to believe that was going to be possibly the last ale. So instantly the theme presented itself. It had to be the end of the world. It's Ragnarok. Where the Vikings get taken up into the sky by the Valkyrie, because it's all going to end.
Valhalla.
Valhalla. We're going to burn the ship, and everybody goes away. So I sent out this letter to all the teams except Marlboro, saying, please come. We're going to do this theme, but come with something to share to thank Marlboro for all those years of good fun, and it worked out great. And the Viking theme was a lot of fun. We turned the dining hall.
So
Okay. I
So
paused us. Go ahead.
okay, so
that
we were
was
talking
95.
about 95. So
Ragnarok.
yeah, so because it was going to be the end, we thought it got to be Ragnarok would come as Vikings. We told the English team that was coming over that was our theme, so they came as Valkyrie. They had all outfits of Valkyrie, and there's pictures in here. The women had turned spray painted paper plates to be breastplates, sprayed them gold and put stuff on them, and they were all good sports. They talked about getting on the airplane with their spears and shields, and you couldn't do that these days, but back then the airlines gave them a little bit of a look over, but let them on. So we had the Viking camp down on the field, but we had turned the dining hall into a mead hall, like a Viking mead hall, like from Grendel. So we had these flags and shields. The shields were very handy because when they were all together in a group, it could be a Viking ship, and we'd have the keel end was
Shield
the
up.
dragon, and we could march along, looking like a Viking ship.
Right.
But so for the evening, we took them all up to the dining hall, and again, Bob Antiu, who's great with bringing stuff, had brought a fog machine. So there was a layer of fog throughout the dining hall at that point. And one of the funniest things was Alex Nahr was on the volunteer fire department up there. And at one point in the evening, he and his fellow firefighters came flying in the door in full turnout outfits, no max turnout, their firefighting equipment. Where's the fire? Where's the fire? Because the hall was full of smoke. It was steam. It was not real smoke, but it was very funny. So that's another example of them playing along and getting into it. So that was a fun year.
And then they kept going.
The ales?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they kept going, so we had to come up with more themes. That's true. I don't think they kept going because of us. It had nothing to do with us, but we were prepared to give them a good send-off, darn it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who are the, do you have new people joining your team?
Oh, sure. Yeah, luckily, because, some of us...
I'm just wondering
some of us old-timers don't dance as well as we used to.
And as the new people come in, are they...
No. I mean, are they as willing to do the hygiene
indoctrinated into the...
That worked for a while. I think there's less of that now. We went through another sort of contraction where one of the guys on the team, I guess the general feeling was that this is all fine and good, but let's sort of get back to just Morris dancing and not do all the hijinks stuff. And it is, it was a lot of effort. So that kind of, unfortunately for me, it petered out. But then there was another evolution of sort of more serious dancing. Mm-hmm. I mean, more concentration on getting the dancing or keeping the dancing at a good level.
For yourselves.
In his mind. I thought we danced fine, but this guy was, particularly wanted to, thought we should dance better, and our actual kit changed again. They didn't like all the ribbons. There was a team discussion for several weeks and a vote, and they thought it was just too much, and they went to a look that looks like every other Morris team, just some rosettes. Yeah, so.
Is it interesting that people join teams that they don't seem actually to sync with? And then they may not stay though if they really don't sync. I mean, if they don't sync with the people as friends, then they're not likely to stick around. Right.
But sometimes.
Was there a squire of the team at this point?
You missed that early part where we decided to not be squire. We were squireless. We were all squires. It was the People's Republic of Newtowne.
Right. But
which
was there at this point? Did you evolve toward a squire?
Once again,
at this point, is there still no squire?
There's still no squire, but there is a dance foreman. So that's the person who we will dance a certain way, and that's fine because they want to take on both the effort to get the dances right and teach them. So that person is the dance leader, but there's still no squire.
Okay, to this day there is no squire.
Yeah.
Is there an official team contact?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
but not a squire.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were mentioning just about recruiting some people to join the team.
Back way in the beginning, we if we only had 6 or 8 or 10 guys, that's great, but only if everybody shows up, because you need a minimum of 6 and a musician, usually, to do a show, to do a stand, to go out in public. And I mean, you can do jigs, one person and a musician, but it's not the same. So we were always looking to pull people in, and I was very lucky and happy when my friend Mitch, who I'd met through Rounder Records. I was working at Rounder Records at that point, and I was their import manager and also ran the retail company, the mail order retail company. And Mitch was a record salesman who came over to the warehouse one day, and he seemed interesting and funny, and after a while, we were, after many times getting together talking music, I said, hey, you ever interested in Morris dancing? He goes, well, I don't know, what is it? He might have seen it at Pinewoods or something, but so he got taken under my wing, and
You recruited Mitch to Morris dancing.
And Bob Doucette.
Oh my goodness.
Again, Bob Doucette was a local musician, fun friend. We played a lot, different bars and stuff, and I said, I'm really into this Morris dancing stuff. Might you be interested? In fact, I remember we were standing on that little bridge over at Porter Square, kind of watching the train go under, and Bob said, well, maybe I could. So when do you practice? And I said, it's Monday nights, and I'll take you there. And he was hooked. And Bob Mitch, of course, is just, he's one of the central guys on the team now, but Bob, quickly, with his musical abilities and his enthusiasm for all things dance, he's one of the people that he could command an evening for fun, just leading singing. And singing in pubs was something we all very much enjoyed. And it was fairly decentralized in the early years. In later years, we got two really good singers who mostly did most of the singing because they were just so much better than the rest of us, so we let them sing. But it was very democratic in the early days. Bob would pull out his guitar, and I don't know if you've ever heard Bob sing, but he can just command a room and get everybody singing these great, fun songs. So he's another one I'm very, I'll certainly take credit for helping him drift our way, as it were.
How did you describe what you do? Like, if someone said Morris dancing.
I would try to do what Roger did, which is, share enthusiasm for it and, check it out. Maybe it's your thing. Maybe you'd like it.
Do you like jumping?
Do you like to watch your body deteriorate quickly over years? Do you have a good chiropractor and an orthopedic
someone who
surgeon?
can give you new knees.
New knees, yes. Well, as Mitch actually said last week, when the Traveling Morris was in Boston, and I joined up for a day, and because I wasn't dancing with him this year, haven't for a number of years, but Mitch was there, and I said, Mitch, it's so great. He's my age, so I was like, Mitch, it's so great to see you still dancing so well. And he goes, well, my secret was to dance poorly back then, so I didn't ruin my knees, so I can still do it these days. It was funny. I wish I had thought of that. I did too much leaping about back then, and I haven't ruined my knees because I'm still working. I still work full time building greenhouses, and so I'm still clambering around on stage.
You work with Mark Ward?
I work with Mark Ward, and sometimes work separately with Mark Ward. But yeah, we are still building greenhouses.
I talked to you on the phone one time, I think.
Okay.
Years ago.
Were we turning you down for a greenhouse, or?
No, I worked for an organization called Earthwatch.
Okay.
And we had a big concert. There was this dance troupe from Russia was visiting the States, and this was in the 80s. It was very unusual. And so Earthwatch organized this big concert. And so Livingston Taylor was one of the people.
Okay.
And he got talking about the phone in his car. And this is when people didn't have phones in their cars.
Right.
He had a Mercedes with a phone in it.
As one does.
As one does when you're the brother of James
Well, Livingston had his
Taylor.
own career, too.
Yes,
He had
yes.
pretty good songs.
So I got interested in the phone. He said, come and use the phone.
Yeah.
So I knew Mark Ward's phone number, but you answered the phone.
Oh, that's
How was the story getting around to me? It's like, Mark's busy. I'm his answering service.
I think that's what you said, actually.
Mark can, talk way too long on the phone and avoid work. So if I'm near his phone, I'll answer it and get the germane information
That's what
and
happened.
take notes and then move on. I got to get
So
this greenhouse
funny.
built.
Oh my God, that was
Yeah.
a long time ago.
Yeah.
In another life.
small world.
I didn't know you did that. I mean, I didn't know you were still doing that.
it. Yeah.
Wow.
In fact, we've been doing it so long. We just rebuilt the roof on the Hunnewell's estate. They have a fancy conservatory on the right. This huge I mean, they've got 5 systems of greenhouses, but on their main house, the mansion, there's this beautiful conservatory. And 36 years ago, we put a roof on it. Well, that roof has deteriorated, so we were there last summer putting a new roof on.
Is that in Natick?
It's in Wellesley. These are the wealthy people who were there before Wellesley College and basically granted the land for Wellesley to have Wellesley College. So they've been there a long time.
I used to work with the Honeywell at Earthwatch.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
Huh. Yeah, Walter Honeywell was really into plants and the Horticultural Society and Mark knew about. I guess he and I met through. He worked at Habitat in Belmont.
Yeah.
I just finished rebuilding their greenhouse just 2 weeks
kidding.
ago
Wow.
for the goats.
I had no
but that's a whole
idea.
nother story.
Wow.
I built this. I renovated this beautiful greenhouse, and it was a classroom for 2 years. And then they said, "Nope, let's put the goats in there." And I was like, "No,
Oh my goodness.
goats in my beautiful greenhouse!" And so I just renovated a second wing of it. I said, "You better not put goats in this part."
Yeah.
So
But-
you have like an engineering background or something, or
No,
just
good with my hands. Just
so
got
that's
fell
how
into it.
like when things need to be built.
Mhm.
Are you the builder? One of the builders?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm one of the main ones. It probably came because one has one's abilities, and they show up when you're a kid. My father had no arms, and he was very good at administrating you to do a task, and
Yeah.
I would do it. And I
Yeah.
have 4 rather useless brothers who were not as good at doing things. So I would be the guy who fixed stuff around the house or built stuff. And it just kind of, I knew I was good building stuff. So
I was wondering how
never
you.
took carpentry school or anything.
Yeah.
But with Mark, so Mark has this amazing memory of how he would take a greenhouse apart for some place, and he would remember what every single bolt and nut and widget and all the different things, what they did and where they would go. And not just from one greenhouse, but from hundreds of different brands of greenhouses.
Oh my.
He's got this amazing memory. And he'll say, "Oh, don't you remember that's the one we took apart in upstate New York in 1992? I was like, sure. So anyway, so we've got, if you need a greenhouse, he's still got lots of greenhouse parts.
My goodness.
And so again, he was one of the people who up at Marlboro, between us, we could build pretty much whatever you wanted.
That is so interesting. That was going to be one of my other questions. Like, how did your natural ability shine in the,
And a third person in that is Bob Antia, who has a theater background, and he was another one who would say,
Is this the same Bob with the fog machine?
yes.
Okay.
So he would say, Bob Antia, he would say, sure, if you want that, we could also do this and this. And the year we did the Ramble, which was a takeoff on the Amble the previous year, the Ramble were sort of an Appalachian Yahoos theme. So we were going to build a kind of a Appalachian shack with a still and random stuff in the yard, as we imagined they had broken down cars and whatnot. But it was also the year that Marlboro Ale people said, "Would you mind providing the beer?" So we brought up 12 kegs of beer on ice, hidden in the back of a big panel truck, because you can't really bring beer across state lines if you're not an actual beer seller. We're pretty sure that the police, if they stopped us, they would see this truck full of junk and have no idea that hidden way in the back of the bottom of it was these kegs of beer. But Bob was, he would say, "Oh yeah, no problem. We can put insulation around it and ice and all these other things. We can build a still, sure, no problem." So it was quite a fun collection of talent.
So can I ask, I'm just now catching from what you're saying that Amble on Down was a theme one year.
Yes, that
And
was
then
so.
Ramble Morris
was a different
was
year.
a different one.
Yeah. So
to
Amble,
take off
because
on
there was an
this.
English team coming over, the Windsor women, we thought, well, we should be English to make them feel
Oh,
at
and
home.
this was for the England theme.
Yeah. So
Okay.
we made up this whole mythology, which
I
is in each of
see.
those brochures, about a team. We were a team from Lummoxshire in the Midlands of England. We were lead miners, so it affected our brains a little bit. We're not we're a little bit slow, so. And we danced poorly, like a lot of the English teams we had seen, these old men with their paunches barely getting off the ground. Sadly, now we've become those guys. We're sort of like ZZ Top, you know. we now look as old as we now are as old as we looked back then. But so then we kind of, you know, the next year we weren't. I guess it was sort of cheating to say, well, let's just be Ramble and have the same sort of idea, but this would have been using the folklorist notion that dancers from Amble in the 1700s had emigrated to America and settled in Appalachia. So they were still dancing, but so like with folk music, you know, Cecil Sharp came to America to collect more authentic child ballads than he heard in England, because in England they would have evolved and changed, and whereas in America, when people immigrate, they tend to keep doing the same thing the same way. So that was our idea for Ramble, that these were more authentic poor dances than the Amble guys had done in England, and had a whole mythology around. So in America, these guys settle in Appalachia and mined saltpeter, which is bad for you in other ways, for your libido apparently. And so that had its own little fun spin-off. And food was great that year. You know, some bean slop, and we had whiskey and, you know, all the kinds of things we imagined Appalachian people would eat. That was a fun year. But we digress.
Give us a moment.
We're trying not to laugh our way through the interview here.
Does
Because you want your voice to come through, but this is just...
Does your team have a fool?
We're all fools.
They don't need a fool.
It's interesting.
Leading question.
It's interesting you said that, because for a few years, couple different guys tried it in the sort of traditional way, where, you know, that fool the fool like Tony would dance around the team and whack people, and it just nobody really thought it was. The team never really took to it. And so we didn't have a consistent fool. Vic Young tried it for a number of years, and it takes a certain personality to be more serious or more funny than everybody around you.
Right.
And Morris Sunderland, the famous fool from England, has come over to him. He was at Marlboro a couple times. One of the giants of English Morris, was squire of the Morris Ring for many years, and just the most wonderful guy. He was a great fool. Brian Foster was one of the really great fools from East Suffolk Morris men. When we were over there dancing with East Suffolk, and we were young guys and just kind of soak up all this Morris stuff, he showed us what a fool really could be like. He was just a tremendous guy. He would always show up at whatever Morris stand first thing in the morning with a hat full of beautiful fresh flowers that I said, Brian, how do you manage to have fresh flowers in your hat every day? He goes, well, I just steal them on the way here. I just take them out of somebody's garden on the way here. And I was like, that's terrible. Don't they come out and yell at you, taking flowers from their garden? He goes, oh, no. I take all their flowers. So when they come to the door and they look out and they think, did I plant this here? Yeah, that was just his funny sense of humor.
Interesting.
So no, we'd have fools here and again on Newtowne, but as I say, it didn't really take. The character, now I have to tell you a little bit about the Key Lynn. When we were first New Cambridge, Roger was very intrigued by the unicorn of the Westminster Morris team in England. They had a really, really wonderful unicorn character that had a jaw that opened, and it would be it would go around and collect money. People would put money in the unicorn's mouth. Sorry, I said horse. Forgive me.
Man.
In the unicorn's mouth, and so Roger had his wife Sally make a unicorn, a similar looking unicorn, and it was nice. It was pretty simple and basic. It was balsa wood and painted, and I gravitated toward being the unicorn, to dancing the unicorn. It was always bloody hot because it was a black cape. I couldn't see where I was going because he didn't make the Westminster unicorn had a thing you could see through.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I need one of those. And so actually when the teams kind of split apart, I was also really torn because I really liked also dancing the unicorn. So, and Roger kind of wanted to just take that with him, which was fine. You know, that was fine. But so when Newtowne reformed, I thought, well, we should have a similar character. So I did a bunch of research and came up. There's this Asian unicorn called a Keelin, K-I-L-I-N, and it's a Asian unicorn. It's a Chinese. It's one of the Chinese great beasts, and it when it shows up, supposedly, you know, great things are going to happen, like a new emperor will be crowned, or weddings will spontaneously happen, or whatever. So it seemed to be a good fit, and you know, I wanted it to look a little different than a nice, cute Western unicorn. So it's a little more scary. In fact, there's some years where kids will instantly start crying if I get near them. A certain age group, they just like melt down. And that never happened with the unicorn. For some reason, with this, the eyes light up and the jaw clinks and clacks around. And
Are you in it or carrying it?
in it? Oh, I'm in it. I'm totally anonymous in it. I'm invisible.
Can you put it on?
Sure.
At the end,
Yeah,
we'll take a photo.
Yeah.
We'll take a video.
Oh, yeah.
In fact,
Okay.
it fools some people. I mean, maybe they're not too smart, but one time didn't think I was bothering this guy's kid, but he must have thought so. He reared back and socked it, even though my shape is clearly, I'm a human and I've got two legs. He hit the unicorn, the jaw so hard it practically knocked me over. I said, boy, I'm so glad he didn't figure out where my head
Wow.
was,
Oh,
where
my.
my human head was, because he would have decked me.
Oh my.
But yeah, lots of good times with the unicorn, with the Keelin.
Wow.
So what I was saying was that the team has tolerated that character, because a fool can get in the way of dancing if you're not good. You have to be a really good fool to work well with the set while they're dancing. And so I've always made a point, and I'd see that in other teams and think, I don't want to be that guy. So if I was dancing the unicorn or the Keelin, it'd always be either way on the periphery or not at the same time. It was not. I didn't want to detract from the performance of
Okay.
what the team was doing.
Huh. Wow, interesting. So how would you say, like overview, how has Newtowne, Cambridge, evolved as a team at the Ale, or has it?
Absolutely, it's
Yeah.
evolved. It's evolved as a team, and as I mentioned in here, one of the great things that Roger gets a lot of credit for starting teams. Tony and the Marlboro team, because it wasn't just Tony organizing all that thing. He definitely had a lot, but he was the guiding spirit. What that did was, in bringing teams together, they could see each other and see see quality of dancing and see better dancing or worse dancing, and also feel that feeling of community, the kind of thing that Roger so longed for it to happen. So Tony's Marlboro was, even though it was just once a year, it was very instrumental in keeping us, both. Once we got into hijinks, we'd spend a lot of time worrying about or thinking about that, but also to try to keep the dancing level of the quality of dancing at a nice level, to not embarrass ourselves when we got to Marlboro. We'd actually say that, the show dance got to look good, so we got to practice. You guys, try harder. So the evolution of a lot of probably most teams got better because of the Marlboro Ale. Even though it was just once a year, it's just something about seeing each other and seeing folks that some teams would come over from England and just blow us away. Like they've been dancing for years and really good, or they'd come over and they weren't that good and would say, okay, so
Have some pride in yourself.
yeah, exactly, yeah. Or they do very different kind of dancing, and over the years, Tony and Marlboro would bring in very different. They had Southern Cloggers one year, sword teams, like traditional sword teams from England that have been doing just that for 10 generations.
Right.
So yes, evolving. The team would evolve in and on its own, but also at Marlboro it helped a lot to. We could see it was like a snapshot in time over the years, and we could see. like as we got bigger and better and had these multiple sides, and then as we'd shrink again and barely get 6 guys to commit to go to Marlboro, because it's a commitment. So yeah, we have evolved.
It's a good thing.
It's a good thing, and we've stayed a team because of that. We weren't saying we have to look this way or we dissolve. We have to look this way or we dissolve. So we've had to go through some changes, and sometimes we lose people. I drifted away for a long time, for a number of years when that sort of strict notion of dancing came back in, and a very different way of organizing the team was in vogue. So,
I think you mentioned when you were talking about Mitch, just off the cuff, it really changed his life. It just took over his life.
He said so. I mean, he has said that Morris has been very, very good to him. Bob Doucette would agree. I would agree. We've met people, wonderful people. We've danced with wonderful people. We've met spouses, said goodbye to spouses, met other spouses. Morris has been very, very good to us. I can't think of anyone who would say, maybe if I can think of anybody who's actually injured by it, but even then, it was their fault. I like Mitch's attitude. I wish I'd thought of it back then, to just not try to get off the ground too much, to save yourself for when you're 70 or 71.
Right. Oh my God.
But I wouldn't want to end this interview without, again, saying thank you to you both, but also just to, we owe so much to the people whose shoulders we stand upon. Roger Cartwright, Tony Barron, John Dexter, the Pinewoods team that, at Pinewoods Camp, that,
right.
Even back then when they weren't a regular dancing team like they are now, they kept what we used to say, they kept the flame going. They had people that learned that stuff, passed it on, taught classes, taught it not just to men. There were,
right.
Early on, the women who were hanging out with us in our first year or two, Kathy Mason and some others said, why are we following them around carrying their sticks? We could do this. And they formed the Muddy River team, and before long they were way better. They were as good or better. They were different than we were, but it was fun that they had decided to start their own. And so several women's teams, Ring of Bells in New York City, sprouted up. Jody Evans started that team, and Janice Murtaugh and some others, and that was great because when we went to the Ale, it wasn't just men's teams. In England, the ring meetings were just men's teams. There were no women allowed till pretty recently. Yeah, so the Ale was more fun. Let's put it that way. This Ale, the Marlboro Ale, was more fun in that way, and it just seemed more American to be, to have equal rights be a thing. Especially when they do it better than us.
Can I ask next about
Yes.
this amazing team portrait that's over here?
Mm-hmm. So this is in front of our little clubhouse. So that's the Honeywell estate. So the greenhouse that we renovated is over to the right, the conservatory.
Okay. And I'm going to take a picture of this photo so we have it with us. Can you?
It's one of the ones in the collection I gave you.
Oh,
Sure,
excellent.
but,
Okay,
take a
can
picture.
you give me a who's who
Oh, my
from sort
goodness.
of the back row? Like if we started, I know who some of these people are, but if you could say it, we'll fill it in.
Bruce
Pratt.
Vic Young,
Ah.
Peter Bonaccia, Carl Fristrom. Oh man,
Is that Gene Lerner?
thank you, Gene Lerner.
He sent us some stuff recently.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Dave Stryker, Dave Dusenberry, Bob Doucette, me, the Key Lynn. Don't forget Key Lynn.
Oh, sorry, Key Lynn, and then you.
Bob Antilla, John Brown, Peter Masters, Alan Dimmick, Gabe, which is Dave's son. Wherever Dave went to, there's Dave. Gabe Dusenberry.
Okay.
Orrin Rosenthal,
Ah, yes.
Mitch, blanking on his name right now. That is, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Is this being recorded?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Sorry, we'll edit the ums out.
And let's see. I'll think of it in a minute.
Yeah.
Davis Sweet,
So great.
one of our great
Let's go
musicians.
down here. Jim.
Jim Bories, Hal Iverson, Gordon Brown from he's now down in Washington D.C. Davis Sweet, great musician, and Mitch and Nathaniel, I
Okay.
guess. Yeah.
Awesome.
And there's Amelia over here.
Oh
Little
gosh,
tiny
Amelia Mason.
Amelia Mason.
Oh.
Who's on the end here next to him?
That's Peter's son,
Bobby's son.
Jamie.
Okay.
So some of the guys' children joined the team, some didn't. My twins famously had absolutely no interest in dancing with us. They both could have been great
Wow.
dancers, so they just weren't interested.
Yeah.
That was my thing. That was something that crazy dad did.
Yeah.
So I'm not bitter.
Or sad.
Mitch's son
This is so
Nathaniel
familiar.
really took to it. He's the current.
a beautiful dancer.
He's a
Yeah.
great dancer, and he's currently the foreman. So he's the
Yeah.
dance heavy. He's keeping guys keeping the standards up.
Yeah.
So, in just talking to Tom Kruskel, Peter is now, co-teaching with Tom.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
It's
And
great.
Tom's someone, boy, I'm sure you got it all from him. But he's also sort of a junior Johnny Appleseed. He started lots of little teams that have
Right.
sprung up, and
Right.
I don't even remember what's happened to them all. But on May Day, we also ran May Day at dawn on May 1st.
Oh, yeah.
Since 1974, the same year. So he would show up with some random new bunch of enthusiastic, good dancing little kids, and it
Yeah.
was always fun to see what troupe he was bringing out at that event.
I think it's always necessary with any group of people to have a person like Tom, not only idea people, but also the person who just takes the lead in the marketing and
The
he just-
organization.
the organization.
Yeah.
You need that. Otherwise, you just have a bunch of followers,
Right.
And that is,
And I was never really part of the Pinewoods instructional universe, but they have that. I assume they have that philosophy too. That spreading their edict is to spread the not just Morris dance, but any kind of English stuff, English dancing.
Yeah.
And some there's a number of the old Pinewoods guys who would come around when we were just starting, and we would just be in awe of their ability and their commitment, and they were how nice they were and how nice they were to us
yeah.
ranked beginners. And none of our early team were Pinewoods people. None of them come from a dance background. We were just in fact, that may have been one of our strengths, that we weren't sort of jaded.
Yeah.
We didn't know about this stuff.
And where did Roger Cartwright pick things up?
So he was he'd gone to Pinewoods for many years.
Oh, okay.
So he's one of the stalwarts of Pinewoods back from the 60s.
Oh, okay.
Mark Ward's father,
Right.
was one of the regulars. So some of these people, Mark did grow up going to Pinewoods, but some of these people have been doing that at Pinewoods. Doing
Yeah.
not Morris dancing, but social dancing and singing and all that for years.
Yeah.
But usually just at Pinewoods. One
Right.
week or
Right.
it didn't. If you weren't part of the Pinewoods in crowd, you would maybe never know about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it takes just a few people to kind of like you say,
Right.
plant seeds somewhere else.
Right. So, again, Roger was very good at, he really took it upon himself to say, I'm going to try to spread this beyond the ivory tower of Pinewoods Camp. And maybe others did too that I just don't know about, but Roger's the one I most knew about.
Right. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you for letting me
This
natter on
great,
like this.
Great talking to you. Sometimes these interviews are very serious, and sometimes they're just a lot of fun.
Oh dear, I hope this wasn't too much. I hope it was sort of serious.
This was delightful.
No,
This was delightful.
you. I mean,
You
I'm
got me
just,
talking.
I just, looking at you just covered everything that we were curious about.
Well, you were nice enough to send me a list of thought-provoking questions, so
Awesome.
I looked them over.
Would
So,
you?